Hey guys, welcome back to Pistons Talk Podcast. Hope you guys are having a great weekend. Man, Sean, Lions make me just want to jump off the Ambassador Bridge after watching that. I don't know about you.
Dude, honestly, there's a small part of me that's kind of like, there they are. But like, it's like there's the team I've grown up watching. But at the same time, yeah, it's just, I mean, as you can tell by my hat and my shirt, it's been a little bit of a rough football weekend all around for me personally. On one hand, it's great to have football back, especially NFL football. There's nothing.
Did I lose Sean? Not even a minute into the. Oh, there we go.
Oh yeah, like football, it's like the depression. It's like the light. There's like no light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes it's like you have to wait until the next week to hopefully get redemption. And it's like for the next week, we're just going to be hearing people yell and complain and blame people. And really, no other sport where that happens to that degree.
I was about to crash the F out if I lost you 40 seconds into a podcast because it got a little fuzzy there. I was like,
oh no, is my internet starting to get choppy?
No, I don't know if it's StreamYard because people that watch this podcast know I've lost connection 4 weeks in a row. Like 4 weeks, the podcast has just crashed. I reached out to StreamYard. They haven't even emailed me back. So maybe it is their shit. Who knows? I don't know, man. Maddie Fresh says I'm here to recover from a Lions loss. Hey man. I feel it. Maybe this can be a therapy session for a little bit, but I mean, man, that game, I was so hyped because it was Green Bay and the Micah Parsons beef, and then 4:00 happened. I get home a little late, see the Packers scored first. So I was like, okay, yeah, we can get back in this game, and it just never happened. It just never happened, man.
No, it never happened. And honestly, it's one of those situations where it makes you quickly go, when does the Pistons season start again? When is basketball coming around? Because even at least with that, when there's a loss, I mean, like the beauty of the NBA is a lot of times you're playing again the next day. Like there's no time to really dwell on some of those rough nights. Like you're right back in action. But in football, there's only time to dwell. Like the majority of the time, you are just waiting and just sitting in whatever feeling you last had as a fan.
100%. Chuck Brewer, subscriber of both of ours.
Says
nothing better to put me to sleep than Sean. Damn, Chuck, you're not that mean to me.
And there's nothing better to build up my self-esteem than comments from Chuck. So this is just a beautiful, beautiful exchange. I put him to sleep. He puts me to therapy. It's a worthy 1-for-1.
Honestly, I've never seen that side of Chuck, and anytime I have you on here, he's just in rare form. So maybe.
Oh yeah, no, that's the funny thing is I noticed this. Like any other comment section I see Chuck in, he's like friendly. He's just part of the conversation, wishing everyone a good day. He sees me, all of a sudden it's like, I gotta get some ribs in. It's like he has like months worth of pent up aggression, but I wouldn't expect anything else from Chuck. I love it. Always glad to see him in the comments.
Oh man, and we talked about Lions for a little bit. We're gonna talk some Pistons, obviously, on this podcast. I know sometimes people get pissed when I do talk about Lions, but man, like I just sat through that game for like 3.5 hours and listened to Tony Romo just gush over Jordan Love, and I was just like, man, I gotta put this shit on mute because it was just terrible.
Well, the odds are that 99% of people that are tuning into this podcast also care about that. So there's a very, very, very big crossover. So the 1% of you that don't care, you're very much in the minority. And the feeling is very much mutual, by the way, Chuck. I know I do not take anything you say to heart. I promise.
Well, I guess he doesn't like me then. What the hell, Chuck?
Yeah, that's really what he was trying to say. He was calling you out, putting you on Front Street. Like you have something to aspire to now.
I guess I got to be a bigger asshole. Maybe I can do that, Chuck. Just wait, we got the season coming up. We got training camp, 3.5 weeks. I can be an asshole. Let's get into
this. You got to be a prick like me, dude. That's what you got to be.
I guess I've been too nice, lately.
Yeah, dude. So quiet, so reserved.
We're gonna get into this podcast. I do have a couple of topics for us to discuss. One of the first topics that I do want to dive into with you is development, and I've thought about this for probably like 5 days, unhealthy amount. and my answer has changed every day.
Uh-huh.
But I want to ask you, who do you think needs to make the biggest jump this year? Like you're just looking at these young guys. Some players are on contract extensions. Some players are still on rookie scale deals. But when you look at this young core and players on this roster, who is it for you?
It's interesting because I feel like you could answer this question in so many different ways. Like if you're talking about who for the Pistons needs to take the biggest jump, I look at a guy like an Asar Thompson just because of his athleticism and his unlimited potential and a lot of the things that he can do. On top of that, you just look at the guys that they lost last year and just, Asar's a guy that can slot in and fill in a lot of those areas if he improves. But like if we're going like which player for themselves needs to take the biggest jump, to me it's Jaden Ivey, because it's the guy who, in my opinion, can have the biggest impact on his future and on his next payday. Like I think Jaden Ivey, especially coming off of a really solid beginning of the season, but let's be honest, after the injury, not only did the Pistons continue winning, their winning percentage, if anything, technically went up. I'm not saying that's because of Jaden Ivey going out. I'm not saying, anything of that's right or wrong. That's just the reality of what happened. And so for Jaden Ivey, like if he comes in and has another season where, similar to last year, where there's improvements, there's solid strides, he's probably only going to get paid around like a Colin Sexton-esque level, right? Whereas if he comes out and proves to be like that definitive option next to Cade Cunningham, you're making Trajan Langdon's life a lot harder, and you're making him dive deeper into the checkbook to make sure that he stays around. And so I think just for where he wants to be in his overall long-term career, where he's going to be as far as like which echelon in the NBA guards does he lie in? Is he, I kind of said before, like, is he a Colin Sexton or is he a Darius Garland? And like fans might be like, oh, well, like those guys aren't very far off. And you're right. But one gets paid like 10, 15 million a year. One gets paid 30, 40 million a year and is a franchise cornerstone. There's a big difference. So like to me, when I think of the guy that like for his sake, for his outlook needs to have the biggest year, I think it's him.
It's funny because that was my answer today too. And you made really great points. My points are a little bit different in terms of, you touched on the contract extensions. You touched on what he could possibly get. I think when you look at a bigger scope of it is, I think a lot of people have questions about, is this backcourt going to be together for the long-term future? And I'd like to think they are. I'd love to see Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham, grow together, make the playoffs together, win series, eventually try to compete for an NBA championship.
Yep.
But they just haven't been healthy. They've had injuries. They've had jackass coaches just, bench him for no reason. It's been a thing where I think Trajan is still like, yeah, I need to evaluate this roster. I need to evaluate to see if these guys can actually fit together. I think that's one reason why I had Jaden Ivey as well. And obviously, I can understand why some people might have Asar Thompson, Jalen Duren, Ron Holland. But I think Jaden Ivey has a lot of pressure on him. One, because of the contract extension. Two, when I was talking with Kuka Hill from Locked On Pistons last week, he had told me that Jaden Ivey did get a contract extension from the Pistons, but he rejected their offer. So that tells me the Pistons offer, we don't know what the number is, but it tells me that they gave him an offer that he wasn't happy with. So is he looking? He's probably looking for a bigger payday. So I think there's a lot of pressure on him to produce this year like he was last season. And I know I see some people, talking in the comment section saying, we're putting, I know Devon said I think we're putting too much into this topic, but I think both things can be true. You can put a lot of stress into team success, but I think individual success and team success kind of go hand in hand. If Jaden Ivey has a good season along with Cade Cunningham and others, you can have team success in that, right? So I think Jaden Ivey is my answer as well. My 1B is Jalen Duren.
Yeah.
I really think that when we were talking about Jalen Duren first 25 games of the season, we were very frustrated. We were annoyed with the effort on both ends of the floor. But I think for him, I want to see if he can play at that level the second half of the season for a full 82 games.
Me
I want
too.
to see. I'm really curious to see like what can he do on the defensive end of the floor.
Right.
Because if there's slight improvements, I'll be happy. I thought what he did in the playoffs against the Knicks, I was impressed. I think Cat and Mitchell Robinson still kind of had their way, but there were things that I took positively away from it. But would you have a 1B as well as myself?
Yeah, I honestly think Jalen Duren deserves to be right up there too, just because if you look at how this team takes another jump and solidifies themselves to be in the upper echelon of not only the Eastern Conference but of the NBA, for years to come as one of those intriguing young teams, it's Jalen Duren taking that next step and becoming that that solid wingman to like a Cade Cunningham. Like we've seen those guys blossom already and play really well together. We've even seen, Duren have a solid, playing relationship with, an Asar Thompson, and their chemistry really started to build as well. But, like for this team to really, continue to like carry forward and be consistent and, have like that solid level of play on the defensive side of the ball, like Jalen Duren's like the anchor of a lot of that. And, I think a lot of their inconsistency at the beginning of the season did come down to the fact that they weren't getting consistent quality play at the big position, especially when, Duren was out on the court. Like Isaiah Stewart for a lot of the beginning of the year was averaging more minutes because he was the better player at the time. And as good as I say Isaiah Stewart is with his height and, not quite the same athlete, there's just an inherent limit or ceiling when he's out on the court versus a Duren. So to your point, if he goes out and looks like first half of last year, I have some real concerns because, at what point do you get over that hump and we don't have to have this conversation about your effort and, like your intensity that you're bringing? And again, like this isn't something that we're like speculating about. I was in the room when Jalen Duren said, these are his words, not mine. I was on some soft shit to start out the year. So does he come back and come back with a vengeance? Like he knows the difference between when he's bringing it and when he's not.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he had that self-reflection, I think, is huge. Because some players don't kind of reflect on their play at all. Some players are like, "Oh yeah, it's the coach. You're still going to pay me." The fact that he did that, I think, is one great. It shows his maturity level, but two, he knew that he wasn't up to par. He knew he wasn't up to playing defensively because some games, Sean, you would see it. You would see the flashes of the rim protection. You would see the flashes of putting it together on the offensive end of the floor. But other games, it's just like JB had to get him out there and throw Isaiah Stewart out there for 25, close to 30 minutes, just because there was more consistent effort on the defensive end of the floor. But I should have known that we kind of had the same answers. I feel like we're very like-minded in terms of just like any type of topic I have. We never disagree, and it pisses me off.
Well, when we do disagree, it's like, yeah, I could see where you're coming from. There's validity to it. That's valid. I mean, it's like, yeah, like obviously it would be awesome if they, if like Ron Holland came in and could be a really solid, consistent, like rotational player. But like he even if he does come out and play that well, I don't think he's expected to be one of like the major focal points of the team this season. Whereas like Jaden Ivey, he's gonna be one of the guys with the ball in his hands the most. He's gonna be one of the guys expected to generate offense night in, night out. Jalen Duren is expected to be our anchor. And then Asar Thompson, he's perhaps like their biggest X factor because of the fact that he's often guarding the other team's best player. And when he's causing turnovers and causing havoc and scoring, a lot of times teams are further and further behind in the score column. So Like to me, like that, it's like those three players that you have like pictured at the bottom. It's like, it has to be those three guys, because one of those three has to establish themselves as the clear number two next to Cade for this team to start going deeper into the playoffs and to really establish themselves as an elite NBA team and not just a really good one.
Not like that fun team that everyone's like, oh, it's a cute story. Like you want them to take ththose like huge strides and steps. And we
Right.
touched on the top of the podcast, like Trajan, since he's gotten here, has always been in evaluation mode. And I think he's just still trying to evaluate who could be the number two on this team. And if they are on this roster, should I lock them down now or give them an extension next summer? Or if they aren't on the team, do I have the pieces to acquire that number two?
Right. Exactly. And you have to be a lot more sure about that in this modern NBA than you were in the past, because your decision making, the contracts you sign are way more consequential. Like back in the day, we'd see a lot of restricted free agents, even if teams didn't necessarily love them. It's like, all right, just get them down on a number, get them locked up, and then we can go from there. You can't just go from there anymore, because like you are significantly like allocating resources that you really don't have nearly as much of anymore.
Yeah, this new CBA is really. I think you saw it this summer, and you saw it during the trading deadline. Like, I think a lot of these teams are very hand shy now with the way they want to spend money, and the like. Before the CBA got into effect, Sean, like off seasons used to be crazy. First round picks used to just get traded out like insane amounts. You'd see like OKC get like 5 first round picks in an off season. You're like, what the hell's going on? You don't see that as much anymore.
There's still 4 restricted free agents, like 3 now, after that Cam Thomas signed his 1 year, $6 million deal with the Nets. Like there's still Jonathan Kuminga, Quentin Grimes, and Josh Giddey all out there unsigned, which, a lot of like those guys are pretty good players. Like Quentin Grimes, like I don't know what the holdup is here. He's not exactly, like an all-star caliber player. Like sign him to a deal and go from there. But like, guys like, like Kuminga and especially like Giddey, had a good year in Chicago last year. And all because of, like how strenuous the salary cap is. Teams like the Bulls, they have a hard time determining what's a good value for Josh Giddey.
It's not like he wants 30 million and they've offered him 20 and he's not budging. Like if I saw Cam Thomas and he was asking for like Jalen Green money and he settles for his qualifying offer, if I'm Josh Giddey, if I'm Jonathan Kuminga, I'm taking the deals that these teams have given me. And it's just, you're not going to get paid the way, other, free agents have got paid in the past, because a lot of these front offices have to be very frugal with their money now because, getting into the first apron, second apron, these teams have to be very creative with the contracts that they give out now.
Yeah, no, they really do. And, also what we see throughout the league is you have to really make sure that what you're doing is within the rules, because if not,
yeah. I mean, do you aspire to?
Oh boy. Let's not branch out to that topic just yet.
If you guys don't know what we're talking about, you probably will.
We'll eventually get
there. For sure.
We'll get there.
Yeah. So the next topic is kind of like a 1B to who needs to make the biggest jump. So do you believe that the Detroit Pistons are banking too much on young internal development this season?
I don't, because I think that I don't think they've necessarily married themselves to a direction at the moment. Like I still hold out the belief that there's no reason that they couldn't go out at the deadline and make some form of move for the future. I do think right now that in order for them to like maintain, I think they're certainly making a calculated bet on the talent that they have in house. But I also think if you look at some of the maneuvering that they've done, and we'll talk about this player in a little bit as well, but it's pretty clear to me that they're holding out and seeing if a Malik Beasley reunion is something, like that makes sense. So if he does indeed come back, if you look at the roster from last year compared to this year, really the only thing that you've lost is Tim Hardaway Jr. and Dennis Schroeder, which those guys are big pieces of what the Pistons were last year. I don't want to, like discount that in any significant way, but I don't think losing those two guys is like a 5-6 game like difference in wins or losses, right? Like now they're certainly like making a bet that a guy like a Ron Holland will be ready to step in at a more consistent level on both sides of the court. And I certainly think there is some risk to that, but I think with the level of play you saw from Cade Cunningham, with the level of flexibility you'll still have, in December, January, like beginning of February to make a move, I don't think they're necessarily making any risks right now that I would say are too far out there. Like I don't think they're feeling too big for their britches about where they're at right now. I think they're very conscious of the fact that they can still get some more tape, some more tape out there for them to be able to digest and to feel more comfortable about where they're at. And it's going to kind of be the question of, do they go like the Pacers direction and, identify someone that they can bring in and, and like really kind of help bring this to another level? Or do they go the Kings direction where they maybe sit on their hands a little too long, put some feelers out there, but ultimately watch whatever window was there kind of go by them? Like that's kind of the risk that you're taking. But I think they're still very, very far ways away from being in Kings territory for sure.
I've seen this conversation. There's a lot of back and forth, and there's a lot of divide with Pistons fans across, the Twitterverse. Like there's this past summer, like run it back, just re-sign what you have and let these young guys grow. Kind of like what you're saying, like they need a little bit more evidence, they need more tape, more evaluation. But I think a lot of Pistons fans that got used to what they were doing last season, being a top 6 seed, winning 44 games. They see Atlanta, who I think had a phenomenal offseason. They had a really good offseason. I think they'll be much improved. They see Orlando. Orlando just did a cannonball into the pool first. They said, we're getting Desmond Bane. We're good on the KCP experience. I think Pistons fans see that, and they're like, we don't want these teams to lap us in the standings. We don't want to be left behind. And maybe, they were a 6 seed this year. Let's say they're a 7th or an 8th seed. Like, I think that's the fear that kind of like goes in the back of some Pistons fans' minds of where they thought that they had enough tape and evidence to get Cade that number 2, rather than, you have your own president of basketball operations saying, I'm not putting all my chips on the table. I want to evaluate. I'll run it back as much as I can. I'll add some vets that don't take away from Cade Cunningham or Jaden Ivey or Asar, and kind of just, have them be a pillar for them as they're developing. I happen to kind of lean on the side of, I don't think they are, but I could see why some fans think that, not getting a 25 point per game score next to Cade to take the pressure off him to close games could be a risk.
Yeah, I can understand why fans are sick of hearing the development word, because they've been hearing it in Detroit in some form and fashion with the Pistons since 2009, right? But like at the same time, you look at Atlanta and Orlando, like Atlanta, for example, they've had Trae Young for years now, like coming up on a decade, and they have to come to a decision, especially as he's heading into his prime, of whether or not he's a worthy, person to build around going forward or not. And even Orlando, like even though like age-wise they're still pretty close to the Pistons, I would also argue that they have a lot more of critical tape on file than the Pistons do, specifically in the category of playoff experience. This is a team that's played like 3 playoff series together now as like a core group. That's like 15, 20 games of high level, like playoff level basketball to be able to identify what your weaknesses are and where you need to grow. Whereas Detroit, that like last year was a really, really solid foundation and was a really, really great sample size to be able to see what you're missing and like what you are right now. But also, if you're Detroit, You didn't have Isaiah Stewart, so part of you wonders if you had that that fortification in the paint, if you don't even have to go make a move for some form of big or paint presence in the future. And then, there's the reports of Detroit feels like it would have been a different series if Jaden Ivey was available. So why would you go spend significant assets on a number 2 or like another offensive player if you have any questions about if that person's already in the building? It's just, to me, it's like, I'm not saying I think one way or another. I'm not giving my opinion on if that's the right or wrong decision, but like, you can at least respect the trepidation to just go out and put all your chips on the table if you're still early into a blackjack hand and you don't want to be too far away from 21 before they start flipping those cards. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I get both sides of the fence, and I can understand why fans are. We've been getting the patience talk for a long time, but I think why this time is different is we've never had this much young talent on the Detroit Pistons in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Obviously, I grew up tail end of Grant Hill era. There was a lot of talented players on that roster. Grew up at the 04 Pistons, but outside of Tayshaun, they really didn't draft any of those guys. They were just trades, which is just wild to think about. But I mean, you kind of just look at this core and look at the top 5 picks, look at the lottery picks. Like, this core, I think at least deserves this season, and maybe at the trade deadline you have more answers. You have more answers of like what you think they could possibly be. Maybe you pull the trigger then.
Yeah.
But I did want to bring up this topic. I know we got a couple of people contributing with this topic. Chuck makes a really funny point, and it's actually a question for you. It says, Sean, can you imagine this fan base in the early Golden State process a decade ago?
Oh man, that's a great question. I feel like they would be like, why is this Draymond guy on the court so much? Dude is short, can't shoot worth a lick. What's he doing here? And little did they know, turned out to be pretty good. I also think, though, in fairness to the Pistons fans, the Warriors never had a 28-game losing streak, and like they were really bad for a long time and had some pretty bad years of historical ineptitude, but it never reached some of those levels. You know what I'm saying?
You imagine Pistons fans be like, we should extend Monte Ellis and just have Curry off the bench.
Yeah, it'd be like, this is going to be a trade that we go down for years, living to regret. Getting this Steph Curry guy, when we had the Monte Ellis in-house.
Man, I like, just as an NBA fan, I remember those conversations with Golden State fans. Like, they didn't even realize how good, or I should say great, Steph Curry was going to be. I could not imagine Pistons fans are in the Golden State area, like the Mark Jackson era, especially when they like fired him and like hired Steve Kerr. Like, I remember like just seeing like kind of like people like, really, we're going to move on from Mark Jackson and hire Steve Kerr, who did a little bit of front office stuff with the Suns. Like, any NBA fan base would probably crash out respectively, but I mean, you got to give Steph Curry and the Warriors credit, man. They were every finals, man. I was glued, entertained, and like, they got Jimmy Butler now. They got Steph. Like, maybe Kuminga comes back. Maybe Al Horford signs. Like, even though they haven't done anything this summer yet, I think they're kind of banking on guys to possibly sign with them, and this should be a fun team out in the West this year.
For sure. Putting a bow on kind of like that last topic, though, like looking at, like, I was just curious, so I went back and looked at their schedule, and it looks like there's 50 games before the trade deadline hits, as far as like a sample size. And I think it makes a lot of sense with the pieces that they have in house to give this group another 50 games before making any significant personnel decision, because I would wager, Anthony, that we're going to have a lot more clarity on what this group is after 50 games.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Just stay healthy, please.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the big thing, is like so many, like I would be curious to see how many games like Cade, Asar, Ivy, Holland, and Duren have played together. It's got to be in the single digits.
I looked into it recently, just with Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson, Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham.
Yeah.
I think they played a whopping 2 games together because Asar had blood clots for the first 25 games of the season. Ivy only played 30 games. So, I mean, like that's your core foundation, and they barely played.
And if that is indeed true, imagine saying someone with a straight face, yeah, these guys have only played 2 games together, but we should trade some of them. Like, what?
Right.
You haven't even gotten the clear picture yet. You haven't even seen the puzzle completed yet.
I don't know how many times like we have to have revisionist history with the Pistons. Like, how many times have the Pistons made a premature trade and it blew up in their face?
So many times.
Yeah, it's like, let's do it again.
Who they are. That was like their calling card other than defense.
I know we got some New Orleans Pelicans fans watching right now, and they're always asking
me
about Joe Dumars. Asking me about Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver. I'm like, just pray on it. I did want to acknowledge some people that are watching live on YouTube. I got shout out to Bravo. Miss you, Bravo. Miss doing podcasts with you. Hopefully you're not, sneaking out on your patients. We have Tom, one of my favorites. Let's go. Shout out to you, Tom, man. He was like kind of joining on in with the conversation about like if we had Stu, we beat the Knicks. Tom, I feel the same way. I do. I think Stu kind of cleans up any of that Karl Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson stuff. But
I also wonder how many more technical fouls there would have been if Stu played. At least 5.
I feel like as the season went on, he got a little bit better. I knew Stu was calming down a little bit when like Ron would get in a fight, and like Stu is the one person where like I know like if I got in a fight, he's the first Piston I want. But like when I saw Stu grab Ron and like talk to him saying like, hey, like chill out, that's when I knew like Stu's kind of maturing, because like Stu 2 years ago, him and Ron would be like fighting the Timberwolves. Like straight up.
I agree with you, but also Isaiah Stewart in a playoff series, seeing the same team 6 or 7 games in a row, he would have murdered Karl Anthony Towns in cold blood if he had to see him on the court night in, night out for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, that's when I knew Stu was kind of maturing as a player, which I was just like, yo, like even like Cade, like during like, because Ron tried to fight during the Knicks series and Cade like pushed him. Everyone's like, Cade pushed Ron. I was just like, Cade's like, man, we don't got time for that right now.
No, Cade's like, we need you. Stop. Like,
yeah, like straight up, man. I love Ron too. Like a lot of people know, like I'm a big Ron Holland guy, but like the fact that you got like your 2 vets out there, and we're calling Cade and Isaiah Stewart vets, just like kind of like take him aside, be like, bro, like we need that intensity on the court, not with you squaring up.
Yeah, it's really tricky, man, because you want to play with a high intensity, but it's about being able to channel it.
We'll go to the next topic, but I just want to answer this question from Ryan. And he says, why haven't they played much time together? Is it because they don't match well? I don't think it's
health.
That. Yeah, it's health and freak injuries. Like it's not that this core doesn't fit together. It's just we haven't seen a big enough sample size to have that opinion. I think that they don't match well. I think you could chalk up, Jaden Ivey was having the best season of his career under JB Bickerstaff, and then Cole Anthony recklessly dives on his leg. Isaiah Stewart got injured during that Minnesota Timberwolves game. And then that knee inflammation towards the end of the season started getting really bad. You just have, kind of freak injuries towards the end of the year during the season. I don't really think we have enough evidence to actually come up here and say that this core doesn't match well. And if we did, half of this core probably wouldn't be here.
Yeah, people forget how bad the ankle stuff was in 23-24 for Jalen Duren, but he missed like over 20 games because of that injury stuff. And then right as he got back in the lineup more consistently, Asar Thompson, it was announced that he had the blood clot stuff and he was going to miss the rest of the season. Jaden Ivey, he had some injury stuff, but also there was just the really weird, like the weird situation of him and Monty Williams, and like his rotations and how he was handled there. Like all that to say, there was a mixture of health and organizational, shall we say, disalignment that didn't necessarily maximize this window that they've had together thus far. That's why I think if you're Trajan and JB and all these guys, it's like, all right, year 2 of our regime, let's really see what we have.
Yeah, I just wanted to get to this question because I feel like some people have the same opinions as
it's a good
Ryan.
question.
It's a good question. I just don't think we have enough like concrete evidence.
Right.
It was just like malpractice on Monty's part with Killian Hayes and Jaden Ivey. Like I still don't understand it to this day. Like I need
just
30
a little bit. Just a little bit.
I honestly just need a 30 for 30 just for that season alone.
I may or may not have called Pablo Torre's hotline at one point to ask what's happened with Monty Williams. Like what happened? I may or may not have called that hotline.
Honestly, I would love to see him dig into that season because it would, it'd be cinema. He'd find something.
From the conversations I've had, like just from hearing about it, like I know it was a bad season. I know that there was some disconnect there. I just want to know when it started, what was the catalyst, and exactly how off the rails did it get? Because like, I mean, we know how off the rails it got from a record standpoint, but like,
yeah.
To me, I remember like distinctly this was my first year, obviously covering the team in person. So having a little bit of a different like perspective of not knowing what's normal and what's not. Mm-hmm. I remember distinctly it was right in the middle of the streak, and it was the home game against the Wizards. It was kind of the game that everyone had circled. If they're not going to win that game, when are they going to win? Was kind of the thought about it going in. And obviously they went out and had a really bad performance that night against the Wizards. It was in November. They lost by almost 20. And I just remember like the fire and anger in that press conference. And just like it's one of those like, hey, we got to wake up. And they went out and lost by 26 the next game. Like it got worse after that. That's like one of those ones where you pencil it in and go, oh, that must have really not sat well.
I want to say one thing, and I think this really actually compliments JB. Corey Woods, who we both know, friend of the podcast.
Shout out Corey, by the way, doing big things with them live out at Lambeau covering the Lions game today. Shout out to him.
Poor bastard had to go all that way for a loss, but love you,
Corey.
Well,
that too, but
he told me that they weren't allowed to listen to music while they were working out with swear words in it. Now, I go to Pistons games, and shout out to all the Pistons DJs, DJ Chachi. Man, JB lets those guys listen to whatever the hell they want. I mean, You hear cuss words like crazy, but like the fact that you weren't allowed to listen to music with cuss words in it, I think it kind of sets like the locker room and the culture of what you're trying to do. And not everyone's wired that way. Like where it's like when you play sports growing up, like the coach is like the ultimate head figure of being. You have to respect him. But a lot of these players, get paid top money. Monty was getting paid like a guy on coming off the bench, but. Just to say that, like, JB lets those guys be themselves, and I think that's what's really shifted from the Monty to the JB era.
Yeah, I think I think one thing about JB that he really highlighted at the beginning, kind of to your point, is bringing the joy back into the process, and like it's one of those things where it got so intense there for a little bit for that team last that 23-24 season that. I think they forgot that this was a game that they all loved, and that you're really only going to be at your best when you're having fun at work and when you're enjoying going into work each and every day. And I think the fact that he made it like from day one, an environment that was welcoming and encouraging. Like, kind of to your point there of like, I think what we've really seen in the modern day of sports is like, to really be successful, you really have to allow a lot of these guys to truly be who they are, especially in basketball, because like in football, you like a lot of things can be scripted, right? And like a lot of things can be covered up from coaching. But like in the basketball world, like you can have plays, you can have like a system that you're running, but ultimately a lot of it's freelance in the flow of a game and adjusting in real time. And like I think a lot of that like you have to have a confidence and like an assuredness of yourself that stems from the fact that like the coach is allowing you to be yourself on and off the court. And I think that's like something that JB does as well as anybody, is allowing guys to be exactly who they are within the confines of the team.
Yeah, it's not even like a JB thing. Like I feel like it trickles on down from Trajan and like
Yep.
I'm scrolling in on LinkedIn and like people that no one knows watching right now. Like the Pistons have promoted so many people, whether it's like on the PR side, social media side, video production. Like it's so cool to see an organization like that clean their stuff up and be more respectful, more like run smoothly.
Yep.
Because for so many years, during the Tom Gores era, it hasn't been run smoothly, like whatsoever. It's been a lot of coaches, a lot of GMs getting fired, and just kind of rolling, new coaches, new GMs, and hopefully, this regime has success and they're here for more than a 4-year period.
I think one thing that's like really telling about how this regime responds versus like kind of how Tom Gores ran Pistons teams have been ran in the past is kind of how they responded with the Malik Beasley situation. Because I don't think a lot of people, especially in the Pistons world, would have blamed them if they went out and spent significant assets to go and fill that hole. Right? Like, I don't think anybody would have blamed them. But what they did was, yes, they went out and found players with like to fill that salary. Like they went and got a guy like a Duncan Robinson, who's a safe option, as someone to fill in as a shooter, but they made that contract extremely flexible to where if it doesn't work out, there's a very easy out for both parties. If like with Karis LeVert, like he's a very dependable, like, is he going to wow you? No, but for $14 million, that's probably one of the better options you have in the league, for like that level of salary. And by the way, as we kind of like get into this conversation at some point, they've positioned themselves to still potentially have Malik Beasley if the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah.
And so to be able to have like that patience and that pragmatic approach to where it's like, hey, either way, we're going to be okay. But also like we have a world where we can kind of have our cake and eat it too.
Well, we could just talk about it right now since we're talking
I'm sorry to
No.
be dictating the
No, it's good,
here.
man. That's how podcasts go. You just talk about it and you flow with it. I mean, like obviously we got news this week from the Detroit News that Malik Beasley has paid off his debt. He was over $30,000 in debt at his Detroit hotel. So I'll just ask you, I mean, like thoughts on the latest development with Malik Beasley and maybe his future in the NBA, I guess.
Yeah, my kind of first thought on this was the part of the reporting that was like that kind of raised my eyebrow was obviously he paid the settlement with like with the landlord, essentially with his apartment complex that he was living with in Detroit. The part that raised my eyebrow, Anthony, about the report, and I'm not sure about you, was the part where it said that he moved back in to the apartment in Detroit. Now, I know that there's still a lot of things to be settled. In fact, I'm pretty sure Malik is in Rome right now. Like, I think he's in Italy traveling and doing stuff. But the part that makes my eyebrow raise is the fact that he moved back into this apartment. It's not like he was without a roof over his head throughout this time. In fact, I think he was spending a lot of this off season in Miami or kind of like down south. But to me, the part that I found interesting was the fact that he did move back into the apartment in Detroit. And again, looking at the looking at the landscape of the other teams that could sign Malik Beasley at equal or greater value, I still think a Detroit reunion is what's going to make most sense here. The most interesting wrinkle and the thing that I found perhaps a little misleading about Shams Charania's reporting on the Malik Beasley situation was when Shams reported that Malik was no longer a target, right? Like he essentially said that he was no longer a target, made it sound like Malik was essentially in the clear when it came to this whole situation. But about a day or two later, I forget who came out and reported this, so I apologize. But essentially, like, it came out like he's no longer a target, but that doesn't mean he can't face legal issues. That doesn't mean he can't be charged with something. That doesn't mean he's necessarily fully in the clear. So it's still very like murky as far as what his future really looks like. And that doesn't even fully factor in what the NBA could do, because there's the criminal punishment and there's whatever punishment the NBA could deem is necessary. A lot of it's still up in the air, but from what it looks like right now, Anthony, based off of what we know today, I think there's a good chance Malik's in a Pistons uniform opening night.
When you kind of look at the teams that are interested, the Pistons are the only team that can actually offer him money that he wants.
Yeah.
Mark Stein reported that he's looking for north of the mid-level exception, meaning he wants more than the mid-level. I mean, you have teams like New York, all they can offer is I'm sorry, I don't know why I said mid-level. He's looking north of
above the veteran minimum.
Yeah. So Pistons can offer him around $7.2 million using his non-bird rights. The Knicks have a veterans minimum available. The Timberwolves have a veterans minimum available. So, I mean, you look at the teams that are interested in him, and they don't really have the cap space of what him and his agent and his camp are looking for. As of right now, I mean, it could change. We could wake up tomorrow and Oklahoma City Thunder want to sign Malik Beasley, and they have $8.5 million of a mid-level exception. And Malik could be playing in OKC, and I would absolutely hate that. I don't even know how they have a mid-level left with all the money they've spent this offseason.
Insane.
It's insane. But I want to kind of shift over to the condo thing, the high-rise apartment, whatever you guys want to call it. Now, my understanding is he's still under contract with the lease that he signed. That's why the rent continued to go up. Now, he could have just paid that rent off because maybe he signed it back in November when he got here, October, November. So that lease could be up by, next month or November. And maybe he's in Detroit still, maybe he's playing for the Pistons, or maybe it was just to pay that rent because you'd rather maybe pay, $30,000 now versus possibly $50,000-$60,000, because I believe the rent is around $8,000 per month.
Yeah, this might be a good time for us to state that neither of us work in real estate.
No, but I've lived in a lot of places that have rent, and a lot of those leasing places, they can be very difficult. They might not give you your security deposit back. Maybe he's just trying to pay that debt off so he doesn't owe like $50,000-$60,000 at the end of October or November. But the way it was worded from the Free Press has me thinking that he may look to want to be in Detroit, because Detroit is the only team that has kept tabs on his situation throughout this whole investigation. And they have money that could give him a slight pay increase from $6 million to $7.2 million. Now, obviously, the Shams Charania reporting, I was like you, I had to delete a video that I made because you get reporting like a day later from Michael Scotto from Hoops Hype saying like, yeah, he's still under investigation. He's not cleared, right? So it's like Shams has done this quite a bit since he's worked at ESPN, kind of clickbait.
Yeah, man.
He's told us that this is going to be the busiest offseason in history. It's been probably one of the most quietest offseasons in history.
I think we're seeing the difference between an insider who is agent based and an insider who is front office based. In regards to Woj, had a lot of relationships within the league and in front offices. Shams has a lot of player relationships and a lot of agent relationships. And I think this is where you're seeing some of that reporting really start to get murky because it's like Malik's like, he's no longer a target. He's still a person of interest. And that's just a legal loophole, essentially. Like that's just like legally he's no longer considered a target, but he's not like, oh, he's just no longer a person who could be criminally charged.
Yeah, the wording. Obviously, I think you really have to pay attention to any times you see a Shams Charania tweet, read over it 3-4 times because he really plays on words, which I think he's actually very clever in that aspect. But
Right.
Woj would never do us like that.
Right. Right. And this is from, so I actually went and pulled it up. This was as of August 22nd. This is from Keith Smith and Jake Fisher. These are the teams that could pay more than Detroit for Malik Beasley going into this season. And it's Brooklyn at 15 million, which that just doesn't make sense for Brooklyn. Like they're not looking to win. Like Charlotte and Chicago can both offer him 14 million. Charlotte's the only team there that would like make sense to me. But even then, part of me wonders if they're actually looking to take a jump or if they're still kind of looking to get some more young talent in-house. And even then they went and drafted Con Kneppel in the top 5. Like they already have a sharpshooter that they want to build around. Chicago, like they're the Bulls. Bulls do Bulls things. I wouldn't be surprised if they went and signed Malik, but it also kind of seems like they want to rebuild too. Like they kind of are sick of middling. So I'm not really sure what they want to do. And then like the Pacers can offer them 13.5. Why would they do that? The 1 year Tyrese is out. The Heat could offer him 7.3, which that's like, if there's a team that I think is like a credible threat to Detroit, it would be that. But correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't they also make some moves within the last couple of weeks? Like I feel like they've been active, or at least of like, I don't know if they can still offer him that same offer or not. And then the one other team would be, as you mentioned, OKC could offer him $8.5 million, but as crazy, like as great of a shooter as Malik Beasley is, with how deep they are, would he even play consistently?
What was the one team that you were concerned about them making moves?
The Heat.
The Heat. Yeah, they made a trade. They traded away Highsmith
That's right.
to Brooklyn, I want to say it may have been, but they took on less salary, which kind of makes me think that the Heat aren't done. They're maybe looking to add a piece or two. Their off season's like kind of weird. Like you trade for Simone Fontecchio, you get Norman Powell, you still have Andrew Wiggins, which I still think they'll be competitive. But I guess
that's the other thing too is Norman Powell and Malik Beasley would kind of be competing for touches. Like he fills a very similar role. So all that to be said, like I think for both parties, like I just think Detroit's the team that makes the most sense here.
It does, and there's there's a thing where Malik's from here. He said how much he likes playing in the state of Michigan. I think the one team that I would be concerned with is in the Central Division, and it's the Pacers. Just for the fact of this, they're not going to lay down just because Tyrese Halliburton is out. They have a mid-level that they could offer Malik. Now, obviously, it's not the full mid-level. I would hate to see Malik Beasley in a Pacer uniform. It would just piss me off. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
But they seem like a team that could really utilize him off the bench. I know they have Benedict Mathurin, but Rick Carlisle said he's going to be starting. So maybe you need someone off the bench to back up at Benedict Mathurin. But I mean, I hope it's Detroit, man. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I certainly think that makes some sense. It's just where my head goes. Like I just, even though like you said, the Pacers are never just going to go out and outright lay down. I also think they understand the value that there could be in adding another lottery level talent alongside of Tyrese Halliburton in a team that just made the finals. And then on top of that, I think this is also a year where they really want to see what they have in an Andrew Nemhard and a Benedict Mathurin and a lot of the young pieces that they have in house, like a Jarris Walker. So I could see this being a year where they really just want to see what they have in house before giving significant touches to someone via free agency. But to your point, like that is consistent with how the Pacers have acted in the past. Like they're not a team that's ever just going to lay down no matter what the perception of what they can do is.
Or the Bulls could just do what Bulls do.
Right. Bulls just do bullshit, man. Like they go out and like they'll go add someone just because they can.
It's the most dysfunctional organization in the Central Division. It blows my mind. I saw the FanDuel odds for who's going to win the Central, and the Bulls were a plus 15,000, which I was like, that seems kind of low.
Well, and you know why it's never going to change is because they've had number one in attendance every single season since basketball's come back from the pandemic.
Oh yeah, I mean, tickets are cheap. You know, they might win, or you might see the Pistons drop like a 46-point victory over them. But I mean,
yeah, it's true. It's true. You could go out and see one of the worst losses the Bulls have ever had. But hey, Cade put on a show.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Billy Donovan got an extension. I mean, who wouldn't want to work for a dysfunctional organization that just pays you a lot of money?
Dude, like you just like get to be mid at your job and just get paid a lot of money. Like, where do I sign, dude?
Hey man, you can get paid $28 million for not doing that damn thing.
It's true. It's true. You don't even have to plant a single tree, dude.
You don't. I want to talk about that towards the end of the podcast. We got one more topic. And it's about the playoff seeding with the Pistons in the Eastern Conference. I've had a lot of conversations over the past month or so. Do you think the Pistons could be a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference this upcoming season?
Absolutely, I think they can. I think first of all, I think there's a lot of like a lack of clarity on what that top echelon even looks like right now. I would say the only teams that I would feel comfortable saying are going to be in the top 3 are the Cleveland Cavaliers and the New York Knicks. And if either of those teams are not in the top 3, something's gone terribly wrong, and they need to have some serious discussions about looking at making some serious changes. Like outside of that, I think there's some real open for debate discussion about what the upper echelon looks like right now. Like I think Orlando is certainly going to be in that mix. I think Atlanta, based off of the roster they put together, is definitely going to be in that mix. Obviously, Detroit's going to be in there too. I personally think Boston's going to be better than people think they're going to be this year. I know Philadelphia would want to believe that they're going to be higher in the East last year than they were. But like all that to be said, like, outside of that, what do we really know about this conference going into the season? Like the Pacers, we have a decent idea of what this team is as far as the talent that they have, but like we don't really know what it looks like without Tyrese Halliburton there to set everyone up. The Bulls, obviously we just talked about how, inept they are. Miami, we don't really know what's going on there. Toronto is kind of a weird team that's like a confusing situation. Like every other team is like either just not that good or not that reliable or both. So like unless Detroit like comes out and has like some significant health issues, or things just really aren't clicking in the way that they should be, or for some reason this young team that we don't expect just suddenly ascends up towards the top of the East, like I think the expectation should be for the Pistons to shoot for a top 4 seed going into the playoffs.
I mean, if I'm just thinking of these Eastern Conference teams off the top of my head, like Cleveland, 1 or 2 seed, most likely. They're bringing people back. They added Lonzo Ball. The only thing where I think they might struggle initially is Max Strus had an injury, and he's going to be out for several months.
Darius Garland, there's some health stuff there too.
With his foot or whatever, turf toe or something like that. So Cleveland's a little bit vulnerable there. So they might start a little slow to start the season, but they still have a majority of their core coming back. I think New York is still going to be one of the top teams in the East with everything that they have in their core. Getting Jordan Clarkson, which I've told you, I think is kind of like an under the radar move.
Yep.
Yabusele, who they signed as a backup, which I mean,
that's a good move too.
That's a good move. I'm not really sure what the situation is with Mitchell Robinson. I've kind of talked to a little bit of Knicks fans of trying to re-sign him for cheap, but Knicks are probably top 3, top 2 team in the East without Boston or Indiana kind of breathing down their neck.
Yeah.
And I think Orlando's up there in a top 3 situation. And why I feel that way is before they had injuries, Sean, they were a top 3, top 4 team when Paolo and Franz were healthy. And, you add Desmond Bane into the mix, and he's a clear upgrade over Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I love KCP, but Desmond Bane can score at all 3 levels, and he's just a bucket getter. And I think he's really going to complement both of those guys and, kind of take some stress off of them. So I honestly think the Pistons and the Hawks will probably be battling for that 4 seed. And
I agree.
Wouldn't it be funny if you got Pistons Hawks first round?
That would be, what a series that would be, man. And honestly, kind of teams that are 2 polar opposites in kind of how they're building and kind of who they are from an identity standpoint, very, very different teams from that perspective, but certainly would be one heck of an intriguing matchup. I think people forget how awesome Orlando was before. And by the way, 2 freak injuries to Paolo and Franz. They got the exact same injury. Injury.
An oblique tear, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. It was, I remember it was either hip pointer, oblique, it was, they got the exact same injury. And then, Atlanta, as high as people are on their roster, which I'm high on their roster too, don't get me wrong, there's also a lot of question marks. Kristaps Porzingis isn't exactly someone you can count to be in the lineup every single night. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a really solid pickup, but how much does that really elevate them? And then also to me, it's you want to talk about the biggest deciding factor of how good Atlanta will be actually is Zachary Risache a star player that they got number 1 overall, or is he a really good role player? Because if he's a really good role player, that's a really solid player to have on your team for years to come. And you like his physical tool set and the gifts that are there. But if he hits, Atlanta goes up another level. I mean, they enter a conversation that they haven't been in my lifetime.
Probably since the Paul Millsap, Al Horford, Jeff Teague days when they won 60 plus games with Mike Budenholzer.
Right.
When they were
even then, I don't know if anyone actually thought of them as contenders.
No, I mean they were a fun team, but they did win a whole lot of games. I think there's one player you didn't mention, which I'm kind of surprised you didn't, is Jalen Johnson. I think he's the biggest question mark, not because he's not a great player. He is. I think the biggest question mark with him is health. Can you play more than 50 games? If he can, then Atlanta's probably a top 4 team in the East, and they're battling neck and neck with the Pistons. But can you imagine, though, that the Pistons are hosting not only second year of the playoffs, but home court advantage as a top 4 seed?
I mean, that would be you talk about one of the greatest turnarounds in NBA history. Within 2 years of a 28-game losing streak to have home court advantage in the first round, that's a massive victory. And imagine if they win that playoff series. Imagine if they're playing until mid to late May.
Yeah, I mean, this ownership group hasn't won a playoff series yet. They haven't won a playoff series since 2008.
Yep, exactly. They finally got the game off the docket, but now can they chain together 4 wins?
Yeah, it'll be interesting, but I do think them and Atlanta are definitely going to be kind of battling throughout the year. Watch the Pistons just have first 20 games are 14-7 or 14-6, and they're sitting at the number 2 seed. Watch that. Sure. I remember when the Pistons got Avery Bradley, and they were the first 20 games, they were a number 2 seed.
Yep.
And then he gets injured, and then we just don't make the playoffs that
year.
Do
you remember? I remember distinctly that game against Boston, in Boston during that 20 game, kind of that stretch. And we went out and dominated the Celtics in the Garden when the Celtics were really good. I remember thinking the Pistons are back.
Yeah, man, I do too. It's kind of funny though, just kind of like thinking of like previous like regimes, but I could definitely see this team just coming out really aggressive, like no slow starts. They get a um indication of the way JB wants to play, and like they come out as the aggressors, play fast. Like they're sitting like in a third seed first 20 games of the season. I think a lot of us are gonna be talking kind of crazy up here.
Yeah, for sure. I think I think if Cade Cunningham is having an MVP caliber year, I think Pistons Twitter will become insufferable.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was pretty insufferable, fighting with Knicks fans, but they were coming at me too, man. I gotta tell you something I did, and
Oh boy.
it involves you, and it's just like we were
Oh no.
talking the last time we were on. We were talking about, I think it was an ESPN list, and they had Joel Embiid ranked above Evan Mobley. I don't know if you remember.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
So I had clipped on TikTok, and you're like, how the hell is Joel Embiid better than Evan Mobley? And of course, the Philly fans found it. And like that video is still getting commented to this day from Philly fans. So you have another team you can check on your list of where the fan base is like, I don't like this guy.
Hey, that's great. Your basketball history's been pathetic for the last 30 years. Congratulations. The entire pride of your franchise is how you were absolutely pitiful for years to tank for stars, which by the way, you didn't even maximize that window. So like good luck with Paul George, Joel Embiid, and like a group of misfit toys going out there and having another historically disappointing year with a star that's going to be known as one of the least accomplished MVPs that the league has ever had. Go ahead.
Man.
Fire away, Philly fans. What ammunition you got?
Oh my god.
Better hope Joel Embiid doesn't tear his Achilles reading this.
Honestly, man, like I feel like Philly and Minnesota fans just adore you.
Oh. They're let's just say they're competing over who can get me a gift basket first.
You said something earlier when we were talking about a topic, and you're like, you don't want the Pistons to be like the Kings. And my brain was a little like, well, they're gonna pull a like, let's trade our best player. Let's trade Tyrese Halliburton for someone that's has one good season, and now we can't get rid of him.
Well, but like, people were so high on them after that 1 year where they had a competitive playoff series against the Warriors. And they're like, well, how are they going to build off of this? And they didn't. Like they sat dormant. I think the biggest acquisition they went and made was DeMar DeRozan, which like DeMar DeRozan's a good player, but like they went and just made Bulls West.
Yeah, it's you got Dennis Schroeder as your starting point guard. Like the Kings are like, yeah, we want to have Russell Westbrook and Dennis Schroeder as your point guards, and then they can't get rid of Malik Monk because no one wants to take on that money. And they're like, well, I guess Westbrook isn't going to be playing in the NBA this year. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that is just, I gotta feel for Westbrook on that respect. Like if he can't even get in the league because of that, like I think that's a little overcorrected.
Yeah, it's I feel bad for Westbrook. Maybe a contender will give him maybe a vet's minimum deal. I don't know like what team will.
Right.
I was kind of surprised when he opted out of his deal with Denver. I was just like, Denver kind of seemed like a perfect fit for him because he didn't have to do everything. And him and Jokic, I thought, played really well off each other. But I mean, hey, man, more power to him.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have time for a couple Q&A questions before we wrap this up?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I do have a couple of questions. We got Pistons fans. We got Camille. If you guys don't know who that is, Pistons Turkey's in here. Shout out to him. And we got Daryl Davis on Facebook that did drop a question. I want to go with Pistons fan because he did ask this question about a half an hour ago, and I thought it was a good question. He said, when you look at who will have cap room and who could be free agents, do you see restricted free agency unfolding similar to next year or not? I asked because of Duran and Asar. You could even throw Ivy in there too.
Yeah, I think under this current salary cap system, I think restricted free agency has been the biggest casualty of it all. like when you look at the players who have really suffered in the sense of not even really getting an offer sheet, or not like whatever leverage that restricted free agency was supposed to create for both sides, like, is just not there anymore. And so I think like I think it's going to vary on the quality of the player. I think there are some guys that are just so undeniable that you just work on getting a deal done with them. Like if I were thinking in my head, like my comfort, like my confidence level based off of what we've seen as far as guys getting deals done, to me, the number one far and away is Asar, just because of how much of a freak of nature he is and how much of like he is about everything the Pistons are about. You know, like he is just, to me, like that is the guy that I just, whatever the number is, just sign it and just you move on, you figure everything else out later. Uh to me, from there, like Duran, it very much depends on what kind of season we see from him this year. Like if he comes out and has like another quality campaign, like we've already seen the images of him and Cade out in Colorado together this summer. Like we already know how tight those guys are. Like if he's producing on the court, we already know Cade's gonna want him here. So like keep him here, right? Like that's where when we have that conversation at the beginning of the show of who needs to go out and have that type of quality year, that's where Jaden Ivey really putting out that production becomes really important, because otherwise, if you don't really stand out, you could be like a Jonathan Kuminga, like a Quentin Grimes, like a Josh Giddey, where you feel like you've put some good stuff out there on tape, and even then you can't get paid what you're worth because the modern salary cap and how afraid teams are of really making sure they're maximizing these investments. And in what more of a unknown commodity can you get other than like drafting someone fresh out of the league than someone entering their second contract who you don't really fully know what they are yet?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a great question because there are going to be teams with cap space.
Yep.
But as it does pertain to the Detroit Pistons, when you ask about Jalen Duran, Asar Thompson, and you didn't mention Jaden Ivey, but I'll talk about him as well. I'm under the assumption that if they do get a contract extension done, it's probably Jalen Duran over the next month. They have until October. That's the deadline. I think Jalen Duran does get a contract extension done.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think both sides want to get a contract extension done, and I think you could probably get them at a pretty fair price. Maybe it's kind of around the Nick Claxton money. Maybe it's a little bit less, hopefully. But I think the Pistons really want to get a deal done with Duran. In terms of Asar, he is extension eligible next summer.
Yep.
Now, the figure for him, I think, is solely dependent on what he does this year. Now, if he takes a step in development offensively, that number is going to skyrocket. I had mentioned maybe it's around the Jalen Suggs type of territory where it's 5 for 150.
Yep.
But if he has, let's say he breaks out, he's shooting around 30% from three, his free throws are around 70-75%. He's distributing more, like that's probably more than 150 if you ask me.
Which putting my chips on the table, I just think that's this. I think that's the year we're in for with Asar. Like I think he's going to be establishing himself in that kind of Jalen Suggs, Dyson Daniels, like kind of like that kind of echelon, is like one of those like premier like young role players that's like kind of more of a star than people really give him credit for.
Yeah, I mean, like if it's around that price point, cool. If he develops, that contract goes up, but that means that the Pistons are going to be better. So it's kind of like, to me, the way I look at it, it's kind of like a win-win. You have more answers about him. In terms of Jaden Ivey, like I think it's a big question mark whether or not the Pistons, let him enter restricted free agency. I think in the event, like we see Cam Thomas, we see Josh Giddey, Jonathan Kuminga, like all those guys wanted over 30 plus million, and none of them got it. And I think a big reason for that is not a lot of teams had cap space outside of the Brooklyn Nets this offseason. But you'll have several teams with cap space next year. I'm like, who's to say? I'm just throwing this team out as an example. Let's say Jaden Ivey wants around 30 million. Pistons value him in maybe 20, to 27 million or 27, 28 million. Like,
Yeah.
who's to say Utah just doesn't like nut up and say, hey, we'll give you 30 million. Match it, Detroit. Let's see if you really want them. Like, I think those are in the back of my mind, like it probably won't happen because Utah has a lot of guards on their team. Like, they just drafted Walter Clayton Jr. They have Keontae George, who I think is kind of similar to Jaden Ivey, but he's kind of had like a weird development curve in Utah so far. But I mean, I really can't see a scenario where any of these guys enter restricted free agency, and you touched on it, unless they just drastically get worse, like some Space Jams, like monsters steal all their like talent type of shit. Like
exactly.
I can't see it happening, Sean. I just can't.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's hard to tell on what would actually happen if they would get there, because again, like you said, it depends on how much cap space teams have, and it depends on like how much they really want to use that space. And again, we've just really seen over the last couple of years, and even like I feel like this is like, relatively speaking, a pretty good restricted free agency class. Like, this isn't like a group of scrubs that we're talking about. Like, Quentin Grimes had a really good year last year.
Yeah.
Josh Giddey, I thought he showed some real growth in Chicago, and like has a lot of reasons to believe that like he could be a really good franchise point guard for years to come. And Cam Thomas is also a player in the NBA. So like, it's like, what's going on here?
Yeah, man, it's a weird situation, especially.
That was mean to Cam Thomas. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's it's all good. I kind of got it, but I mean, like Quentin Grimes, like you could argue he was more valuable than Paul George last year because he wasn't available. Like, if I was Philly, I was like, I will try to meet his demands because I assume Paul George isn't going to be healthy. I mean, guy already got hurt. Like, he's getting reevaluated at trading camp.
Yeah,
He's getting up there in age. Like, he's over 30. He's probably going to have injuries for the rest of that contract. But hey, man, that's Philly's problem. It's not our problem. I wish Quentin Grimes well, but I mean, it sounds like he wants to get paid. From everything I read from articles from The Athletic and other publications out there. But man, I hope the Pistons aren't in situations where they're kind of strong arming these guys and they don't want to pay them what these players want to get paid.
Yeah, I hope that they can find a solution that works for both sides, because it's, again, like, you want to be able to keep guys in the fold and pay them what they're worth, and take care of the guys that you have in house. But again, it's about the responsibility of doing it the right way.
For sure. So I want to give a shout out to Camille, Pistons Turkey. If you guys are on Twitter, really good follow. And he has a question that he wanted to ask. I wanted to ask something. After Sarr recovered, we never used a 9-man rotation, yet everyone assumes we did use a 9-man rotation and doesn't want any additions. What are your thoughts on this?
I guess I'm a little confused on the question as far as like going 8 or 9 deep, like just talking about like how it's going to be managed as far as the rotation goes now with the Sarr in the fold. Like, I guess to answer the question, I wonder with, just with a mixture of Sarr coming back, I imagine he's going to be featured more heavily. And I imagine too, he's going to be getting over 30 plus minutes game, unlike last year. But also, I wonder with guys like Karis LeVert, with guys like Duncan Robinson, possibly you throw in a Malik Beasley in there as well. Like, I think just with some of the names that you do have, like, I think you have a hard time not running a 9-man plus rotation, with some of the players in house. I'm curious what your thoughts are, but I think with some of the players that they're going to be looking to feature, and depending on some of the moves that they make, they might have to go a little bit deeper into their rotation and have a little more guys out there.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of the rotation in my head. Like, you got Cade, Jaden Ivey, Sarr, Tobias Duran.
Yep.
But the issue, I think, with this roster versus last year's roster is you actually had a backup power forward. You don't have one right now.
Right.
And I think what's going to happen is I think Sarr and Ron will split minutes at power forward personally.
Yep.
So that might actually deepen your rotation unless they sign someone. I really thought Trey Lyles was going to have a reunion, but he's going to play overseas. So, I mean, that's the one power forward I was holding out for. He was the best power forward available that was an unrestricted free agent. But just kind of thinking about it, like, yeah, you have Karis, you have Duncan. Who knows who's going to be that last roster spot? If it is Malik Beasley, you're probably closer to a 9-man rotation.
Yeah.
You're probably going to have dual roles like Jaden Ivey has with, playing backup point guard.
Yep.
With Asar playing backup power forward. I mean, technically Asar's already playing power forward anyways. Being in the dunker spot, him and Jalen Duren bumping into each other because there's no space out there. But I mean,
Yep.
You could see an 8-man rotation on certain nights, Camille. I think the reason why so many people are insinuating it might be a 9-man rotation is it's September. We haven't watched basketball since May.
Right.
I made a depth chart. I mean, I think I had a 9-man depth chart.
Well, you'll almost certainly like Karis LeVert will be playing every night. Like that's like you're pretty certain about that. Duncan Robinson, assuming there's no Malik Beasley, like pretty safe. He's going to have a spot in the rotation each and every night. Then you throw in Ron Holland and Isaiah Stewart. So that's where that's where you get to 9. If Malik comes if Malik comes back, I think you have a hard time keeping one of Beasley, Robinson, or LeVert off the court. Like if you can play all 3 of those guys, I don't see why you don't. Right. But at the same, especially if you don't have that power forward depth, but I definitely think, it's valid to bring up, just some of the ways that they are going to have to flex that. It is an inherently different roster. And until we see them on the court, it is hard to tell like what that really is going to look like. But, as of today, like I definitely wouldn't be surprised if they go a little bit deeper, but I could be wrong.
Mean, it depends on JB too. Like when Asar wasn't healthy, he went a lot deeper in his bench. I mean, like we saw guys like Wendell Moore actually get some real clock. And he was a guy that was kind of just like a throw-in piece so we could draft Bobby Clipman. Like we didn't even mention him as a backup power forward because I don't even think it's going to be like a realistic possibility for him kind of based off of Summer League because he seems like he needs more development and just his curve right now. He's still an intriguing player, but if you're just basing it off what you saw from Summer League, hopefully he has a better camp and some good preseason games that could change my thought process on it. But I mean, I could see JB doing some nights 8-man rotation if it's a tight game. Other nights maybe he's 9-10 deep. It would not surprise me at all.
What do you think? Yeah, it is going to be interesting. Like I think guys like like Chaz Lanier, like just with being a rookie, with how much this team's really looking to like be competitive now. Like I think he's going to really have to play at a high level in order to even have a chance to crack a rotation. I think like a guy like Bobby Clipman, definitely not enough consistency there, for like what we've seen yet. And still just still a lot of time there left to see like what he can be as a player. But, it is just one of those things now where as this team is looking to, start being more serious and want to take that next step, like you have to be a lot more strict of who is in the rotation and who's not.
Yeah, I mean, like Javonte Green, like I don't even think that guy's going to make the roster personally. I know Bravo said he's going to be a power forward, small forward type. I think he was just basically signed after the contract details came out. Just a camp body for Ron and Asar to go after a guy that is defensive minded and to make them better. I'd be really surprised if he actually made the roster personally.
Yeah,
I could be wrong there though. But I mean, like when I saw that signing, I was just like, okay, I don't really think that was worth the ESPN notification, but all right. But I mean, honestly, it was just kind of like wild. Like I have no idea what the rotation is going to be. I'm not going to sit up here like I do, but I mean, hey man, there are smarter people than me that will come up here and probably tell me it's going to be an 8-man rotation or a 9-man rotation. I just don't know, Camille. I'm not JB Bickerstaff. I don't work on the coaching staff. I don't know what their plans are.
Right. No, it's just giving our best guess based off of the players that they have in house and the roster that's available and given off of what we've seen over the last couple of years. And again, it's just like that. I mean, that's the thing that is interesting is like, even though like the bones and the, like the absolute, the core, like foundation is still very similar. A lot of ancillary pieces and complementary, like players have been interchanged, which when you're talking about a rotation standpoint, that changes the discussion quite a bit.
Yeah, it definitely does. It definitely does, man. Like anytime I do like rotation stuff, like I tend to tread very pedestrian because I might not put someone in a rotation. Like I think the last rotation video I did, I didn't even have Bobby in it. I had him like as a third string power forward, and
Yeah.
the Bobby fans came out, and like I get it. Like I think some Pistons fans thought he was just going to take all of Sabonis Fontecchio's minutes. But hey, man, wish him well. I just think he might need another year with the Crews, and hey, man, we might even see Chaz Lanier with the Crews because the shooting guard depth on this team is probably the deepest it's been in quite some time.
I mean, I think at least to start the season, I think unless Chaz comes out and has an incredible training camp and, lights it up in preseason and shows that he's ready to to contribute on the big boy roster, which that just doesn't happen very often for second round picks in their first year. Like really the last time I can think of that happening for the Pistons was when they got Bruce Brown in the second round. And even then, like that team wasn't necessarily nearly as deep as this roster. So, like, I just don't think there's that window for a second round pick to come in that light. But again, like, it's just like when we're talking about like wanting to win and going out and like, if it was like 2 years ago, that's a whole other thing because there's not that runway like there is now. It's not like, oh, well, there's that grace of like, all right, go out and let guys make mistakes. Like, the Pistons don't have that luxury anymore. They're going out to be a playoff team. Like they're pushing for home court in the first round, like you said earlier.
Yeah, I mean they're trying to be top dog in the East with Boston and Indiana being injured with their key players, key contributors. Daryl had a question. I know we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but we can kind of just circle back to it. Watch it on Facebook. Do the Pistons stand pat with the team they have now until January? I think so. What do you think?
I think if they would have, I think if they wanted to have a different roster going into the season, I think they would have made a move by now. I think for all intents and purposes, this is the team until February. Like unless like Malik comes in and gets re-signed, unless there's some like eve of camp deal, like when the Knicks went and got Karl Anthony Towns that's looming that we just don't know about. 99% this is the team going into camp outside of like a Malik Beasley. And I think again, I think you wait until 50 games in because you can either be like the Pacers where it's like, oh, like we have something here. Let's invest into it. Or you might realize that you have to reposition yourselves the other way, right? Like there's different decisions that can be made here. So I think they wait until February at the deadline.
Same here. I mean, and unless something drastic happens in terms of like an injury or maybe a trade presents themselves, like you mentioned the Karl Anthony Towns trade, where a team calls Trajan and he just can't refuse the offer. Maybe you get Joe Dumars on a random Tuesday, and he's like, "You want Herb Jones?" type of thing. Like I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
But you never really know. Do you remember last year when I had you up here and it seems like every week we were talking about Brandon Ingram ad nauseum?
Oh my gosh, dude. Every single week. Could Brandon Ingram be with the Detroit Pistons? And I think that was like one of the most relieving things about Brandon Ingram going to Toronto was that I never had to answer a question about Brandon Ingram being a Detroit Piston ever again. Hopefully.
Well, hey, you know who the Brandon Ingram is going to be this year?
What's that?
It's going to be Zion Williamson.
Yeah. Or yeah. Or PJ Washington was looking like he could have been that for a while too.
Yeah, I cursed that.
Uh-huh.
That's my fault.
Yeah. Uh-huh. No, it's always someone, right? It's always someone.
Yeah, I could definitely see Pistons fans if New Orleans has a bad season and the connection that Trajan has with the Pelicans being there when he got drafted. I've seen it like casually like thrown out there, like in, some comment sections about Zion. Because if you kind of like go down his contract and like the non-guarantees that he has are absolutely wild, by the way. I've never seen a contract where it's contingent like on how many games you play and how much you weigh. I was like, bro, that's diabolical by New Orleans.
Yeah. But that just speaks to how unreliable it had been up to that point. The fact that the fact that Zion found those terms to be agreeable and signed the dotted line tells you everything you need to know. But also, before people start answering those questions about Zion, I'm just going to say my same point I said about Brandon Ingram. And it's that if Trajan Langdon really wanted Zion Williamson in Detroit, I think he could have made that happen by now. Just a hunch.
Yeah, 100%. I probably wouldn't want Zion in Detroit because we have Coney, and the one time he came to Detroit, I'm gonna tell you a funny story. So when I used to do stuff with Red Bull, because Blake Griffin was an actual athlete with Red Bull, he was one of his main sponsors. Zion was also under the Red Bull sponsorship camp, so I knew people on the marketing side. And I had posted a video of Zion fighting for his life to stay up on the bench. You've probably seen the infamous video of George Blaha, shout to George.
Oh, yeah.
Call the game, and someone pointed the camera at him, and he's dozing off because
he's literally like struggling to keep his eyes open. Yep.
Yeah. So Red Bull like DM me like, what the hell? We sent him a bunch of Red Bulls at the game to stay energized. And I said, there's not enough Red Bulls in the world to fight a Coney dog when you have a full belly. I'm telling you, you could have monsters, you could have Bang Energies, doesn't matter. Coney dog, Coney Island, you got a full belly, you pass it out, doesn't matter.
The Coney Island coma is a very real thing. It is a very real thing. That is a fight that Coney dog does not lose.
No, it really doesn't. I'll do one more question. Shout out to my guy Ari. He wants to know, do the Pistons keep Sasser?
So if I were to put the odds out here on FanDuel, and if I were making a bet, which maybe not the best thing to be saying with all the Pistons stuff that's been going on, but if I were a betting man, which I'm not, but if I was, I would say that Marcus Sasser is probably not going to be with the Pistons beyond this year, and that's surely just a math reason. If you look at the salary numbers, and if you look at the contract for Marcus Sasser, this year Marcus Sasser is going to be at about $2.8 million of salary. Next year, it goes up to $5 million. So the only way Marcus Sasser is on the team going forward is if he cracks the rotation on a consistent level and actually proves to be worth that jump in salary. Otherwise, if Marcus Sasser's been the Marcus Sasser we've seen, no disrespect to Marcus Sasser, but Marcus Sasser's not going to be in Detroit beyond this year. Like, that's just, you can't, especially in a modern NBA where, again, we talk about the importance of like salary flexibility and like managing your cap room. Like it might sound little, but $2 million is a lot when you talk about the roster that you can build and what you can offer someone, and before going into the tax and all of those different things. So all of that to say, unless Marcus Sasser has like a breakout year, which, with all due respect to Marcus Sasser, I just don't think we've seen anything at this point to suggest that he's not just going to be what he has been. I think the odds are that he's probably someone that can be moved at the deadline and whatever Detroit does, because it's a pretty flexible contract that has a team option that teams can essentially shed salary.
I mean, we've talked about Marcus Sasser when I've had you on the podcast. My thing with him has nothing to do with the availability or the playing time he gets.
Right.
My thing is, when you look at the shooting guard rotation, because he's a shooting guard, he's not a point guard. Whether people want to argue with me, it's like talking to a brick wall. Marcus Sasser is not a point guard. He can bring the ball up the court, but he's not a guard that you want to set up your offense every possession. He can do it, from time to time. You look at the shooting guards. You have Jaden Ivey, Harris LeVert, Duncan Robinson. You just drafted Chaz Lanier. I'd like to assume he's probably above Chaz Lanier in the pecking order because he's, going into his third year now.
Can you assume that?
I can't. I'd like to assume that. I don't know how Chaz Lanier is going to, perform in preseason or have a good training camp. Just to say, I think it's a situation that's out of his control. Even when Jaden Ivey went out, they still went out and traded for Dennis Schroeder. That spoke volume because there wasn't any room for him in the shooting guard room because you had Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley on your roster. It's not really his fault. It's just the way the roster is. I think it's going to be a situation where the front office has conversations. Sasser may say, hey, I love being a part of this team. I'm just looking for a bigger role. Now, he has not said that. He's been a true professional. We've never seen him ever, bash the coach, complain about playing time. When he has played, he has produced.
Consummate professional.
Ultimate professional. I just think there's a situation where if a trade makes sense for the Pistons to move him to an ideal situation where he gets more playing time, I think that's probably what's going to happen. But I don't really know too many teams that are going to offer you a whole lot for a guard that doesn't get a whole lot of playing time. You might get a second round pick. And at that point, do you just want to take a second round pick, or would you rather have Marcus Sasser on the roster for this year, just in case of emergency? Because I felt like that was just kind of his role. Like if, Malik or Tim weren't bringing any type of defensive effort, JB would play him. If there was an injury or it was late in the season, JB would play him. Not to say that he doesn't trust him. It's just the rotations are just so deep at shooting guard. There's just not a whole lot of playing time for him, and it's not really its fault. It's the way the roster was constructed. And I still question trading up to draft him by Troy Weaver because I thought the Pistons needed more small forwards at that time. I know they drafted a star, but I don't really think there was any need for another shooting guard on the roster when you already had Jaden Ivey. It just never made sense from the jump, in my opinion.
And I think one thing that you just said in there that's one of the biggest indicators as to why he might not be prioritized as much going forward is because he was drafted by who? Troy Weaver and not Trajan Langdon. And especially when you're not one of those pillar, core foundational pieces, if you weren't the general manager's pick, there is a heck of a lot less attachment to you in your future and where you end up. Now, again, that doesn't mean Trajan doesn't like Marcus Sasser. That doesn't mean they don't appreciate what he brings. But in the reality of the modern NBA, you can't have someone on the roster that you just don't think is going to play in a consistent manner going forward. And like Anthony just laid out, he's not a point guard. He might be listed as a point guard. He doesn't play point guard. It's not his natural position. It's not what he's best at. And especially in the roster as constructed, he's not in a position where he's going to play shooting guard at a consistent level. So I just don't see it happening. And so with Marcus Sasser, that just leaves, well, okay, what does the next situation look like? What does the next team look like? And again, unless he comes out and proves that he's grown in all these areas and he takes, that kind of that year 3 leap, that's just the reality of where we're at.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that he can't, contribute. I've always felt, I don't know if you feel this way, they tried to put him in a position where, maybe ball handling and passing is maybe you would rate it A through F, but maybe he's a C.
Yeah.
I've always felt like if you put the ball in his hands and you need a basket, that's where I think his A game is. That's where I think he flourishes. He's natural. He's got a really nice handle. He's a scrappy defender. I've always felt like if you put him in kind of like that sixth man, like a Lou Williams type of role where you just need a basket, that's where I think he can flourish. But the problem with that is you have Karis LeVert who does that. You
Yep.
have Duncan Robinson that can be a flamethrower when he gets hot. And you just paid those guys a bunch of money, and they're probably committed to playing 20 plus minutes a night. And Sasser, maybe when you look at the rotation, you look at the way the minutes are distributed right now, he might be around 5 minutes a game right now, 10 minutes a game.
That's being generous.
If it's a blowout or JB's looking for maybe a different look. Again, it has nothing to do with his talent. I think he's extremely talented. I think there's a role for him in the NBA. It's just the way the team has been constructed. And you mentioned it earlier. Trajan has only drafted 3 guys on this roster. It's Chaz Lanier, Ron Holland, and Bobby Klitman. And, Chaz Lanier, to me, I think does a lot what Marcus Sasser could provide. I don't think Chaz Lanier has a handle like Marcus Sasser, but he can shoot the 3-point shot at a pretty good clip. But it's a tough situation for him, man. I really don't know what his future holds with the Detroit Pistons. Obviously, I think he will be in the NBA. I think there'll be teams that would be interested in his services, but I just don't know what it will be with the Pistons.
And like the reality of it is, like, Chaz Lanier is probably getting paid a fraction of, like, he signed like a 4-year, $8.79 million contract. So it looks like, yeah, essentially, like, he's going to be getting paid about half, if that, like what Marcus is going to be getting paid next year, like, and going forward. Like, so simple math problem here. Marcus Sasser would have to be 100% the player that Chaz Lanier is to justify that.
Yeah, and in case, like, even if there's an injury, I'm not even entirely sure he would get more clock at shooting guard. Like, who's to say you can't throw Ron Holland in at shooting guard, which I think Ron Holland's more of a 2-3 archetype. Like,
yeah,
I feel for Sasser. Seems like a really good kid, really, true professional. But it's just a situation he's in. It's kind of like OKC in a sense where they have so many talented guys, and there's a lot of guys on that roster that don't get any clock.
Yeah, it's also just kind of the unfortunate reality of being like an undersized guard who's not a great point guard in the NBA is just, unless you're really going out and doing some of these things at just like a really elite level, it's just going to be hard to find a consistent spot in the rotation. And granted, some of it is he hasn't really had like a full chance or like a like a big runway to really go out there and have that opportunity. But again, part of the reason why is because that's just the business of the league. They're looking to take that step up, and like they can't wait for anyone.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of look at players that are similar to him. I'm like, a Gary Trent, for example, he's not getting paid anything. Like, shooters used to actually get paid top dollar, and now the league doesn't value shooters like they used to. And it's such a weird kind of like transition, because I mean, I remember when the Pistons paid Ben Gordon a shitload of money.
Yeah.
And
I try to forget, but I remember that too. Yeah.
Yeah. You got guys like, Malik Beasley last year, Gary Trent, not get paid as much, but it's just a weird situation. My apologies for bringing up Ben Gordon, man.
Try to forget.
Before we do wrap up this podcast, do you have anything you want to plug and promote for the people watching live right now?
Yeah, be sure you head over to From Half Court. The podcast about to be ramping back up here for the season. Kind of took a little bit of a break after not sure if people saw it on social media or not. Had a little bit of a fire at my apartment complex that kind of sparked a little bit of a summer break. So you can find that on From Half Court, and then you can also follow me on Twitter at Sean Half Court. That's where any coverage for the upcoming season will be, for any like media events and things like that. But yeah, man, excited for basketball to be starting back up, and excited to start having some actual things to talk about again.
Yeah, I mean, Monday's tomorrow, so that marks 3 weeks until training camp starts.
Yeah.
So we're getting closer and closer, man. 45 days until basketball season does start. I just checked my Twitter. I got a bunch of hate comments because I posted Sekou Demboya. They're like, "What the is wrong with you?" I was on a heater today. I was like, I posted, I don't know, around 2:00. I said, it's been 3 years since the Detroit Pistons unveiled the Pepsi Max jerseys. Got people like Anthony Bellino. He's just like, dude, what the hell is that? It's ugly, atrocious. But man, and then I posted the Sekou picture. I was like, man, I'm just on one today. I'm just pissing people off.
You really woke up and chose violence.
I didn't. I was in a good mood. I was like, it's just coincidence sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, I like to think you know exactly what you were doing.
Hey man, unless it's Eric and Derek White, nothing is on purpose.
That's fair. That's fair. When it comes to Eric and Derek White, that's 100% intentional.
You just can't tell me what bothers you, because now that I know that bothers you, I'm just going to keep on doing it.
True. Absolutely true.
Well, if anyone does want to follow Sean, you guys definitely should. I do have his social media links in the description below. We have his YouTube channel, From Half Court. Definitely go subscribe to that. There's really good work over there. I think the last podcast I watched, you had Omari, which was a really good interview. I know I am a couple episodes behind. I definitely have to catch up there. I do have your Twitter as well. Definitely follow Sean if you want to see him piss off Minnesota Timberwolves fans, or talk about Kawhi Leonard and aspirations as of late. But man, I appreciate you coming on again, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. You know I'm always down to come on and join.
All right. Well, we will see you guys tomorrow, because I completely forgot I scheduled Sean tonight. And we have Laz Jackson from the Detroit Bad Boys tomorrow on Monday. But we'll see you guys tomorrow at 7. Hope you guys have a great night, and go Pistons. Lions, get your shit together. Peace.
Do it.